Today's presentation is entitled Building Intelligence and Analytic Capabilities to Support the Procurement of the Future, presented by Procurability. We have two fabulous speakers with us today, Jason Alukian and Sherry Barnes. Jason is a Senior Director leading the Market Intelligence and Advanced Analytics practice at Procurability. His area of expertise includes the practical application of artificial intelligence and machine learning in the corporate procurement environment. Prior to joining Procurability, Jason led client-facing consulting teams for Fortune 500 energy companies in developing and executing sourcing strategies, including category management and strategic sourcing for engineered products, services, and large capital projects. He functioned as the engagement manager for multiple projects, overseeing projects of various complexity and scale. Jason holds a BS degree in mechanical engineering from Worcester Polytech Institute, and Sherry Barnes, whose industry experience includes more than 20 years in the energy and utility sector, where she held various finance, risk management, project development, and strategic planning roles for Pentelos El Paso Corporation, the Williams Company, and Anadarko Petroleum. Sherry earned a BBA in accounting from the University of Houston and MBA degrees in marketing and international business from the University of St. Thomas. She is certified public accountant in the state of Texas and serves on faculty for Lone Star College. And that was a mouthful. Excuse my stumbling, but I do want to welcome both of you to today's webinar and thank you very much for being here. And the presentation is all yours. Welcome.
Welcome, and thank you, Kim, for that warm introduction. I really appreciate that, and we're very excited about this opportunity to speak to SIG members. And furthermore, I'd like to thank the SIG community and members for joining this webinar. We hope you find it informative and interactive and help you take your procurement organization to the next level. Procurability is a consulting firm that focuses in three main areas. Procurement consulting, where we advise our clients on strategy, procurement transformation, digital transformation, category management, strategic sourcing, and any type of supply chain or procurement issues. We also have a procurement talent organization where we do staff augmentation and recruiting. And we have our third division, which is analytics and intelligence, where we deliver valuable insight through predictive spend models, cost and scenario modeling, and procurement dashboards to help our clients save money. Procurement is all we do, that's all we focus on, and that is our core expertise. Next slide, please. Today's presentation is going to be about data and how to use it, how to set up a data analytics division. Data is nothing new. It's something that we've been generating for hundreds of years, but in the past, 5 to 10 or even 1 to 2, the amount of data points being made and collected on a daily basis is grown precipitously. If you just think back into kind of our daily lives of, the Uber you took this morning, all of that time, the traffic, how many red lights you stopped at, how long that drive took, the number of miles, all being tracked. Google Nest, the thermometer inside your home that you activated, all of that data is being tracked. Tesla, a true innovator in the electric vehicle space, tracking all of your driving habits, where you go, what times, where you go shopping, when you go to the movie theater, all interplaced into their in-store, in-dashboard computer. And then, Facebook and Instagram, right, tracking all of our social media, where all that's happening. And just as simple as that, Samsung's coming out with a refrigerator that is letting you know that when you're low on milk. So as we all know, that data is being collected, but a lot of it is unstructured. So how do you take that data and monetize it? How do you develop applications and models and systems and scenario cases to help optimize your process, procedures, and protocols that you have inside your organization? We're going to take a slice from this perspective and help you walk through how to set this up and give some use cases of how to do that. I'm going to pass it over to Sherry, who's going to walk through the agenda at a high level and go through the first couple of slides. Sherry?
Okay, thank you, Jason. Can we see the next slide come up, please? That was a great introduction, and I wanted to also thank SIG and the audience for joining us today. As we heard from Jason bringing this in, this new world of data is mind-boggling. It's a crazy fast pace. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit more today about some of the things that are happening. We've kind of wrapped all of this into a topic called advanced analytics. That's kind of a large word, and it's sort of the compass heading of our presentation today. And so a couple of the things that we want to kind of talk about, there's a lot of buzzwords that are around this. Certainly Jason and I hear them all the time, and I know everyone else on the call does as well. There's machine learning, there's artificial intelligence, there's predictive analytics, there's all types of stuff, and we've sort of put that all into that grouping of advanced analytics. So one of the things that we want to really talk about a little bit today is what exactly is that? What exactly is meant by those kind of words, and kind of how does that fit into today's procurement of what we're working with today, and how will today move us forward into tomorrow, and just really how do we get there? And then we're going to wind up our presentation with Jason sharing some of our information on what really can be seen even today using the tools that we have. I know that Kim mentioned that we would like this to be a very interactive kind of presentation, and we certainly stand by that. The best kind of presentations for our point of view at Procurability are ones that begin and end with conversation. And so please send your stuff forward, and we'll answer them as they go. But we will end up the day's deck with a period of time for questions and visitation, comments, things like that. So, Kim, can you move us on to the next slide, and I'll move into some of the things that we wanted to talk about today. So the main thing that I would say when I think about advanced analytics, or I think about analytics in general, or just artificial intelligence, machine learning, all that, is the thing that immediately comes to my mind is it's fast. It's real fast. And for those of us on the calls that just kind of can sit back for a moment and think about this evolution that we've seen and observed, where, computer equipment went from PCs to all the way to a smartphone in your hand that does 1,000 things that you couldn't have envisioned, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, that kind of thing. So when we think about it, we think of it as being very fast. These tools are very fast evolving, and so it's very, very rapid. And anytime that we have kind of a path that's fast moving, or a situation that's fast moving, it's a pretty safe bet that it'll be very uncertain too. And so our highway that we have here is less of a hiking path and more of a super highway. We know that it's fast, and we know that it's uncertain. Kind of what we see in this world, and a couple of my slides coming up will illustrate this point a little bit better. But we see another situation where we're kind of moving through a legacy transformation, where we're moving kind of from what we do today, which is really based a lot on legacy systems in our large companies, through the cloud and beyond, to something that's much more interactive and much more dynamic. And the holy grail of this highway, the thing that we're always trying to get to, is predictive analysis. And you can see the notes on the slide that typically we predict the future. We forecast what we think is going to happen based on historical data. And just about every forecast that I've ever seen, certainly every forecast I've probably ever participated in making, always has that disclaimer in it that says, past performance is not indicative of future gains or future expectations. And I'm certain that just about everybody on this call has certainly seen those with their stock statements and things. The very neat thing, the very cool thing about today's procurement world analytics and the way that it's evolving is that those forecasts that were based on historical data are becoming much more dynamic and much more integrated. And that's being done, being able to use some of the historic data pool that we've all collected, that we've all been swimming in, but that we haven't really been able to apply. And so the best promise, like I said, I always refer to it internally at Curability, I always refer to it as the Holy Grail, is the opportunity to take all this data and technologies, apply to it, and create really dynamic predictive analysis. So I know that right now you're kind of thinking, well, gosh, I've got those kind of things, and why would it be different today than it was maybe 3 years ago, or why would it be different in 3 years? And the key thing I think that's sort of bringing in is these new data sources that are out there and around. I know in Jason's opening remarks he spoke about some of the data points that we're all familiar with in our everyday life, the Google tracking on our phone, with GPS, the fact that even the current refrigerators can let you know in the grocery store if you're low on milk. All of those things are kind of data touch points that have enabled our everyday life to become much more convenient. Some of us may be a little bit uncomfortable with that, but we certainly appreciate the value of that. We can take those familiar touch points in our everyday life, and we can think about how those same touch points can be provided in the business environment to create real live corporate results that are positive. And in fact, we could even stop for a minute and think about how far that's come in our consumer world and recognize that it has developed as well in the business world. It just hasn't really, or you may not have been as familiar with seeing those results because they're not quite at your fingertips just yet. But one of the things that I know that Jason and I will herald to you today and in the future is that that is coming very, very fast. So with that, let's go on to the next slide, please, Kim. Oh, my gosh, it's a polling question. It kind of popped up. We wanted this to be an interactive kind of presentation, and so our first polling question is in your organization today, kind of how would you describe where advanced analytics would be? A, is it leader of the pack? Is it B, middle of the road? C, are you still exploring? Or, do we really have data, and are we really working with it in an advanced way? Are you moving that question forward, Kim?
No, so the polling question will take a few minutes to populate. If everybody can go in and choose their answer, we've got about 10 seconds more to go before the polling time period expires. So, like I say, if you haven't made your selection, please do so we can collect some analytics and report out, which will take just a few seconds to populate. And Destiny's got that going. So hang tight for just one more second. There we go.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you want to read through those, or shall I?
Yeah, I was just about to do that. I was going to say we've got some good replies coming back here, and I know from my perspective, and Jason, you can weigh in here as well. This is kind of where we would kind of expect it. I think it is a very evolving field. It's very fast. So I think if you did end up in the we've got data and we're kind of thinking about which direction to go, you certainly should not feel alone. I see that about 75% of our listeners today feel their company teams are kind of still sort of figuring this out. They've got their finger on the pulse, but not maybe quite understanding how it's going to end out in the end. Is that sort of where you would see it, Jason?
Yeah, no, for sure. We have about 6% as leader of the pack, 35% middle of the road, 41 still exploring, and 12%. So as organizations go through this transformation of having data and then creating an ROI on it, and then going to the business and saying, hey, we can do these things differently. It's really arming procurement organizations with a new set of data and information that is kind of a new take. One thing that's unique about the procurement organization, it's really the only business function that touches all other business units in terms of IT, marketing, engineering, R&D, manufacturing, production, as well as legal and the corporate side. So it provides an avenue and a path to bring value-add services above and beyond just cost savings. So I think this is a great opportunity for procurement organizations to harness this data and turn it into what we're really calling actionable intelligence through the advanced analytics process.
I think that's a great point, really, to make, Jason. And Kim, if we kind of want to close this poll and move to the next slide, we can talk a little bit more about that. one of the things that I would definitely agree with you on, Jason, is that to really realize the promise of this, and this is really an interesting thing that we may end up picking up a little bit more at the end of our presentation, that conversation period. For this promise to come home, what's different from yesterday's legacy systems to tomorrow's dynamic interactive systems is the clear understanding that these different pools of data cannot be siloed. They can't be separated anymore. You can't just have the procurement system and the accounting system and the HR system and whatever. To really bring the power of all this together, it's going to meld and morph into that. So the slide that we're looking at now kind of talks to us a little bit about the direction of procurement analytics and how we're kind of going today. And that's kind of a nice segue, really, as we look at it, because when I think about what is very commonplace in the procurement professional world today, we have, we don't have legacy systems in that they're all, abacus-driven by any means. They've kept up, and we've seen great investments in new technology and its application. But a lot of what we see in procurement analytics today is still it still has a historical point of view. It still has a little bit of a yesterday's look out to it. So we have a lot of spend analytics in procurement, and that makes sense because, hey, that's what we do is we spend, right? But that's the main driver that we have in that way. And, of course, all of those transactions that we see in spend analytics are kind of historical. We're looking at procurement data. We try to take that procurement data and we try to move it forward using cost modeling and more and more frequently should cost analysis is a part of everything that we do. And we integrate market intelligence, which many of y'all on the call have heard my voice before being an advocate for that. And the real that we have now is real-time performance dashboards and different kinds of scorecards. And, I've designed them. We use them. I'm an advocate of them. But I do recognize their limitations. And real-time performance dashboards aren't really real-time. So one of the reasons I think that Jason and I are so super excited about the capabilities that are coming in the future is that we're going to have that really strong platform that's been evolving in its way and we have a very solid understanding of the procurement data that's available, and we're going to integrate that and be able to get to that next generation. So when we think about spend analytics, spend management tools, things like that, they're going to really kind of grow and evolve into being predictive as opposed to reactive. And forecasting that you see today that's sort of static and in sort of a little bit of a flat environment will suddenly become much more dynamic because it will be integrating real-time market data, spot prices, closing futures contracts, things like that of those data streams. Those data streams will all be integrated in there along with the non-standard that I spoke about a slide or two ago that was about news feeds and social media that allows us to take that consumer world that we're familiar with and to really apply it into the business world data that we haven't quite really done more than mostly scratch the surface. Again, we saw that a good part of our listeners today are in kind of that middle exploration kind of level, some a few more advanced than others. And we want to all move towards being leader of the pack. We all want to move towards being best of class. So these future capabilities, to sort of wind this slide up, the future capabilities, where that really takes us is making the promise kind of come through on this stuff so that we see resource modeling and real-time forecasting that aid our real-time decisions. Instead of, we have to make a decision today looking at what happened yesterday and sort of kind of educated guessing about what's tomorrow. Being able to use these new tools that are in our suite will allow us to feel much more confident about those educated guess and make our confidence interval on their success much more solid. So, Kim, with that, let's go on to the next slide, slide 15. Okay. So I've kind of spoken a little bit about that, and this slide sort of just kind of winds that up kind of. Today on the left-hand side, even in an advanced data analytics environment, we're going to take all this data. You can see supplier, stakeholders, and external, maybe market data, things like that. It's all going to get integrated and categorized, and And then today we used, some various integrated tools, some various data science tools to clean and to fix that. And Jason will speak more about how that's done mechanically. But conceptually, this slide shows us that we're able to take that data technology, that analytic technology, in those advanced ways. And today, what we have or oftentimes we have today, a somewhat data-intensive, kind of wonky, difficult, unwieldy to use output, where we have all these various things that come in, and where this is so rapidly moving, and this is where it's very exciting for us over here at Procurability, is that those kind of wonky reports are now really coming in to this data visualization and reporting technology that is much more interactive and much more user-friendly than the dashboards of today and yesterday. So I want you to kind of think, before I turn everything back over to Jason here in a moment, I want you to kind of think about how interfaces have moved from even, just elegant interfaces that have gone through, like on websites and things, from how that's moved and just so rapidly in the last, say, 3 to 5 years. And just think for a moment about the promise of how these will come. How cool that will be to be able to have this stuff at your fingertips, truly on your smartphone, and it truly be intuitive about what you're going to and where you're going to be at. We're also going to see alerts and notifications, all these things that you're so familiar with if you ever go out to any of the common sites like Google or Amazon or such, and it's going to come right on into those. And so with that, I'm going to shift us over to Jason, who's going to take us through some slides and show us kind of some of the things that we're talking about.
Thank you, Sherry. So the most important piece, and I think Sherry hit on this exactly, is the process. Well, how do you do this, right? We have all this data. So, when you think about it at a high level, and this is a kind of that academic theory, is you have data, and then you want to turn that data into information. From that information, you can drive insight, and then from that, you can drive action. So, what we're really trying to do is take these different levels of data from procurement, from the ERP system, from the supplier, collect that. Then you really want to analyze it. And that's where the predictive analytics comes in there, and the modeling and having different scenario analysis play out about how do you change certain variables, and then how does that impact in the outcome. Then you have to do that interpretation. What are the limits here? How good is the data? How solid is it? Am I taking into account all the different elements that can change? And then you have your results. The results sometimes is the hardest part in terms of influencing people inside your organization about how to do this. And when you talk about the sophistication of an organization, and in the polling we said only 6% will lead the pack, that finds me. I would interpret those results as that most companies don't have a data analytics arm, where they're doing maybe some stuff in Excel, maybe they're using Alteryx or some other software, or they're using a third party. So to develop all of this infrastructure in-house, and then having acclimatizing your corporation and culture to a new wave of harnessing this data into making it from this analytics, insight, intelligence, interpretation, and results, you need to develop a process to help communicate this throughout your organization. So when we do this, we look onto the next slide, Kim. We talk about data collection, extraction, and consolidation. How are you taking this from our ERP system, from accounts payable, from your security access points? Every time someone's badge goes in and out of a building, how do you connect that from your labor rates in terms of your contractors and how they're getting billed, from your suppliers? Then you take that data from the market. What's happening with the Bureau of Labor Statistics? How is the metals market moving? What's happening on Wall Street? What are the political and regulatory environments? So collecting that data is in harnessing it on one place. That's the first step of knowing what you want to do and harnessing that and extracting that. Then there's the enrichment, right? Mending all of this stuff together. How do you clean it? So you get ERP data that's wonky and very difficult to read. How do you write a script that takes out all the dots, periods, spaces? How do they know if it's an error, if it's an anomaly? And having a script that does that. Then once you have the data cleaned and enriched, and this is what we call it more of like the information piece, turning from data into information, that's when you get into the analysis. This is where you run different scenarios. You increase labor wages. Does that make people more productivity? Does that increase productivity? If you work a 10-hour day instead of an 8-hour day. If you give people Fridays off, every other Friday off. So there's different ways to perform this type of analysis that impacts what a different scenario could be. Then you have your reporting in terms of just a real-time analysis and understanding of what's happening in your organization. And that's where you get to the actionable insights. How do you improve your sourcing priorities? How do you improve your supplier performance? How do you capture innovation and savings? What about cash flow improvement? What about P2P process optimization? What about working capital? These are all the areas that you can now influence because you have grasped data at a whole nother level and looking at it in terms of a different lens. And when we say different lens, I mean, that's really the future here, is slicing, dicing this data in ways that have never been done before to unlock savings and process improvement and change that hasn't been done before. So we talked about making this interactive. I'm going to go to the next slide, and we have another polling question here. And this question is really about what's your tough data challenge that you're currently experiencing in your organization? A, an opportunity identification. B, is it data access, multiple legal systems? Is it like the abstraction piece? Can you get access to it? Data cleansing. Hey, we have all this data, but we don't know how to really perform the analysis and to get it to something that can helpful. Or D is, I'm going to read this out because I think there's a rhyme in here. We've got data. Yes, we do. We've got data. How about you? Did I say that right, Sherry?
Yes, you certainly did. Yeah, you certainly did. That was the old rhyme about, it is football season. So I was trying to provide a little mirth in there as well. The point being that, we've got data and we're not quite sure how we're using it.
I thought that was Dr. Seuss, but you got me on the football.
Well, it is football season.
So it looks like the poll has closed. There we go. There are your results.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, this is great. So in terms of results, for opportunity identification, we got 0. For data access, multiple legal systems, we got 38%. Data cleansing, 46%. And the rhyme scheme, we've got data, was about 8%. So, really almost 90% of people, the really challenge is the data cleansing. And with the multiple systems, a lot of large corporations, a lot of mergers and acquisitions, different systems, different ways of communicating and putting out data and having scripts. So the good news is that as we move away from these like Stone Age ERP systems from like the 90s and 2000s into, in the 2000s, it was like the e-tool, like it was the e-sourcing tool or the spend analytics tool. The great thing about data analytics today is that as long as you can get a spit out of a report, you can write software that goes and then sits on top of that ERP system or legacy system and literally pulls it out and organizes it for you. And that's one of the cool aspects of technology, and we talk about data analytics in the future, is that it's really legacy independent. And then the cleaning part, that's almost the easiest thing to do because once we have that data, we can make sense of that. So let's go to the next slide, Kim. And here we talk about the data environment, right? So you have your procurement and AP data, you have your contract and PO, your supplier data, savings, process data, performance. Then you have your market intelligence, your cost forecast, risk forecast, category cost model data, economic and environmental trends, your best practices, what else happening in the market, supplier and term categorization, supplier benchmarks, spend profile comparisons, and then you have your corporate data. Now, this is a key piece because we talk about like the Internet of Things, we talk about IT and OT. And I'm going to pause there because, we have a lot of information on information technology. But the next piece is unlocking the operational technology. So, you have a production facility and you're manufacturing widgets. How many widgets is that machine making. So that inside that machine, it's tracking how many it's making, how much electricity it's using, how many parts go through it, how many widgets are being made, taking that data and harvesting it from the business. And, you know, on the engineering side, that's actually a pretty easy thing to do, to download that data. And like I said, that's the beauty of data analytics, that you can really write software scripts and programs that then can help you unlock and run different pieces to help run maintenance and plants. So when we take all of these four baskets of procurement and AP data, market intelligence, benchmarks and best practices, corporate and business unit data, this is the universe. Like we're really trying to capture everything. So what do you do with this? How do you wrap your head around this? And we're going to go through the next two slides that kind of go deep into like how the sausage is made. Well, not super deep, but more of a high level. But we'll go into how this we can look at in a more proactive way. So if you look on the next slide, thank you again, Kim. Here's the model, right? So you have your input, your procurement data, you have your business unit data, and you have your market intelligence. Then you blend that. Then you combine all of that, and that's where you start running your models. Then you enrich it. Then you do your analysis, and then you visualize it. And Sherry talked about this tool. So there's kind of two components here. The data analytics, machine learning, predictive analysis is kind of everything from analyze to the left. Then what you really want to do is to show your business how this can be done. And that's the visualize component of it. So that's like your Tableau, your Click, Power BI. And everything to the left that's your SQL, that's your R, that's your Python. Those are your software programs. That's Alteryx and other, really the hardcore, the hard data science in your organization. Now, if you develop a really cool graphic and it's very simple and it's very easy to understand on the visual side, what that really means on the left side, on the backhand side, with the input, blending, enrichment, and analysis, that's where the magic sauce is being made, and really making complex algorithms and analysis and modeling to help solve those problems. And if you just think about a piece of machinery, and it had, when it gets too hot, we'll make it simple, and a red blinking light pops on. And then if, once that light comes on and gets triggered, then, all of the temperature's too hot. We need to get a mechanic in here. So then it automatically makes, a PO, and then that PO then gets sent to procurement, and that PO then gets approved, and then that goes to the supplier where the master service agreement's already in place. That whole piece can be automated based on, understanding how this back-end side gets set up. But in the visual side, all you're truly seeing is just a red light blink. So that's how complicated it can happen on the backside, and where the visualized piece is on the right side. Now, what's important about this is we talked about influencing the business and influencing other stakeholders in your organization. Having those very clear, easy to understand graphics to simplify all of this data, that's really the key to success, to make that clear, concise presentation. So let's go one level deeper onto the next slide. And here's really how this is really happening on the back end. You're creating a workflow. And this is in your software, like I said, R, Python, SQL, and you're developing a workflow. And this is where you're using your cloud computing, you have your data input, you have your data preparation, you have your data blending, your predictive analysis, your geographical analysis, demographic analysis, and then you share your analysis. And when you kind of get to that share analysis, that's the point of where it's going to your Power BI or your Tableau or your kind of visual reports. This back end is where all the magic is happening, and you're looking for trends. So, if you're talking about, when consumers drink water, well, then you do analysis in terms of temperature. So you're looking for, if temperatures spike between this level and that level, that's when people will buy water most. So you could have even 12 to 13 different models running different scenarios, looking for the trends, because the idea here is that we have all these disparate pieces of data. You don't know what that answer is, and developing these models in different scenario analysis helps you hone where that improvement can be. And the answer may be that there is no improvement, but the concept here is that you're looking for trends that you didn't have before. And It's very simple now. I'm just going to relate it to like Tesla. If you get in your Tesla car, like you're very hesitant to drive a long distance, right? Will there be an electricity charging station? But when you talk about getting inside your gasoline powered car, that within a certain amount of driving period there'll be a gas station. So it's really getting comfortable with understanding how this stuff works and where to get to the next piece. So I'm gonna go to the next slide and go through a use case that we developed to show how this data works and how we can help optimize a fleet. So this is a use case for a fleet optimization. And the idea here is that we have the data on the right-hand side. So what you have is your GPS tracking of the vehicles, your man-hour tracking, the scope of work, what the work is and the location, your weather data, your payroll data, outage data, how long something's happening, and then your revenue data. So the first piece is there is, response time. How long does it take the crew to get there? How long does it take them to dispatch? Are they taking the best and fastest routes? How was weather impacting their routes? The crew and mix size. What is the size of the crew? What is do we need 3 people or 5 people? Do we need, what's the crew versus equipment mix? How many backhoes do we need versus personnel? Does adding more team members complete the work? How are they charging for that? Are they billing straight time, overtime, double time? Can this work be done in 9 to 5? Are the billing rates competitive? Is this being done by the owner or is it being contracted? Is it union versus non-union? And then equipment rates. How is the equipment being used? What's its operational data? What's the engine hours in terms of its running? What's the customer satisfaction? How long was the outage? How many customers are impacted and for how long? How much revenue was lost? So when you think about these kind of 4 buckets of response time, crew mix, wages, equipment and rates, customer satisfaction, those are, very different types of data of where the stuff is coming from. We have GPS, which is coming from a truck, right? The man-hour tracking, which is coming from the business, scope of work from the business, weather data coming with third party, payroll data coming from HR, outage data coming from operations, revenue data coming from finance. So as we talk about marrying these types of data together, you can start to look to see how you can build an optimization by slicing and dicing different components of data to really drive decision-making process. So the idea here is this can be applied to almost any concept, whether it's a call center or just internal in terms of how your operations and sales, consumer data, how you do your marketing organization, how impactful it is. So this type of information is very versatile in how it can be used. Sherry and I talked about trying to make this an interactive piece. So I'm just going to pause there and see if there were any questions that came through that you would like us to answer or take on.
Right now, I don't have questions coming in. I think that if you want to keep going through, I know we generally tend to see some of these questions come in towards the end of the event. So why don't we go ahead and continue on with the presentation, and I will keep an eye on the questions and interrupt as necessary.
Well, that makes sense. And Jason, I think your maintenance fleet optimization is a very intriguing presentation, because I think had we made one of our polling questions to the audience of, what are some of the variables that are around maintenance fleet optimization, we would have heard things up front that would have been, oh, I'm going to show my mechanical limitations here, but it would have been something about, the oil changes to, to the efficiency of the engine life, or something related to operational that way. And what I like about the presentation that you shared with us, the example that you shared with us today, is that it lets everyone see that the vast power of computing has gotten so far so fast that it's really allowed all these different variables to come in that we can easily see. I mean, we can understand that equipment rates or response time should be an important part of a decision. But until recently, we really weren't able to bring all that depth and breadth of variables in. And so it's very evident to me and from some of the projects that you and I have worked on that being able to bring in those various variables makes the quality of our decisions so much better.
Excellent. And as time would permit, I do have a couple of questions coming in. And for everybody else, please, we're getting, towards the end here. So this is your opportunity to submit any questions that you would like to have answered or any comments that you would like to make. So the first question I have here, we have been trying to use our data for the past 6 months, but it's highly disorganized and we concluded it's not usable. Does bad data equal bad data out? Do you encounter this problem often at your clients?
Well, I'll start us off on that one, Jason, and then pass it to you. If I understand the question right, Kim, and if I have this wrong, then kind of alert me to it. But basically, the question is, we have some mess in our data, right? It needs to be cleaned, and I know we saw this in the polling question, Jason, but just in general, I think you and I run across that just with about every single project we get to. And the way that I kind of think of it in my mind is that you have these different legacy systems, and it's like that closet you have in your house that's always messy. Data is always messy, so that's a very upfront, easy thing. Is that how you would see it, Jason? Kind of.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's exactly right. And as we go into this new frontier of data, and it's going to be messy, it's not going to make sense. And that's the whole idea of running these algorithms and running these models. What Procurability really excels at is taking this chaos of data and turning it into something interesting and mindful. So, we really challenge anyone, in terms of if you have data that you don't really know how to make sense of, would be more than happy to help showcase how you can turn that bad data into something impactful and make decisions that improve your organization. So I guess to answer the question directly, I absolutely see how, bad data in and bad data out, is kind of something of today and yesterday, but as of tomorrow, we can turn that bad data into something impactful and help generate savings and operational improvements inside organizations.
Exactly, an excellent point, because as the question sort of states, does bad data in equal bad data out? So the answer really is no. That data is, as Sherry said, messy, but always has potential to be turned into something substantial. Do you agree?
Yeah, I totally do, and I wish it was as easy to clean the messy closet in your house, but the new tools that are out there and the data scientists and the way that they're able to wield them create what was an insurmountable hurdle, what was Mount Everest last decade, into something that's very easily traversed this year or this decade. I wouldn't have believed it unless I'd seen it, because I do have the painful scars of trying to pick through bad data projects. But I'm thankful to see that we have this new stuff in place. And I would encourage anyone that had those kind of situations to explore some of the opportunities that are there, and we'll certainly, share those with you if you have an interest in hearing more about them. Jason, where do you weigh in on that?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. I agree with you 100%. Not much more to say there.
Yeah, agreed. I would imagine everybody has a little bit of a problem with bad data once in a while. It's just what it is. It's the nature of the beast there. So the next question I have is, in your presentation, you referred to using historical data to predict the future. How do you take into account once-in-a-lifetime events that seem to be happening more and more frequently?
Yeah, that's a great question. And
right?
if I had that answer to that, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be on some yacht in the Caribbean, having a Corona. But no, I mean, predicting, huge changes that are once in a lifetime opportunities, and or the hurricanes or, wars or impacts, very hard to predict. But one thing that we can do using data is to help mitigate that. We can run scenarios that take into account what happens if a Category 5 hurricane does hit, or if an earthquake strikes, or the stock market drops by 1,000 points. That's the beauty of running these models. Now we have what was always considered a dark area. We can now shed some light. Now, like we said, we're not 100% going to be on top of that and be accurate on it. But shedding some light and some rays into that dark area by running these models in different ways will enable companies to make decisions that aren't as heavily risked out to what could happen and make bad decisions. So I would say no. I don't think would ever get to that point. Like I said, if I had a genie or a crystal ball, I'd definitely love to give out those answers and make a lot of money doing it. But the best I think we can do now is really help mitigate that by running different types of scenarios. Sherry, what would you say in terms of your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, and I smiled when I heard it because I was thinking about, it really is true that it seems like the longer that we live, the more, once-in-a-lifetime things and, how they just kind of mash everybody down. I do think that, to me, this question sort of speaks to risk and risk management, and that's an area that every company is interested in, every company commits resources to, and every company worries about whether they've really defined all of them. Again, I go back to the idea that these data models and the application of these new analytical tools allow us to bring in so many more variables than we ever did before. So we can evaluate, if you're in the middle of Kansas, the, chance of a super caldera volcano hitting your business operations might not be very high, and so that's a very low-weighted variable in the model. But certainly, perhaps something that's more frightening, a cyber attack or a terrorist attack. How would that influence the logistics? That type of modeling can now be done and done so quickly. Before, we would have been looking at quants, data scientists really kind of, going off in a room and coming out, sometime next week or next month. And now they're really coming out and giving us real live information that's presented in graphical form that we can see and act upon. And those things are being, marshaled through so very quickly. So I think that's a very cool question and very interesting. And I, like I said, to me, it really speaks to risk management, risk modeling, risk analysis.
Yeah, sure.
Agreed. Powerful. I do have another question, and I want to make sure that we cover all that we can before the top of the hour. And that one reads, we just started our market taxonomy a couple of months ago. Can the system go back and recognize old data for the predictive uses you described?
Yes, it can. It's very funny that you asked that question because someone just asked me that question yesterday. The way the software works now and the way you write these scripts is that it's from one iteration. As data comes in, it will make an assumption, and then all the errors will pop out. And then you'd manually say, oh, this goes here, this goes there. And then it will run that again. And then the next time you run that from the beginning, that mistake is that those errors that get popped out get pushed back in. So there actually is machine learning in terms of how it goes from one iteration to the next. So if you took historical data and added in at a different time series or a different time period, it will then, the first section maybe it'll say categorize 80% of it, and it'll pop out 20%. But then if you allocate where that 20% goes, the next time that comes through, or the next time data that isn't categorized in that 20%, it will automatically be sorted and classified in the proper way from the one you did the first time. So, yes, that's one of the very powerful things. And I think Sherry talked about this very, very eloquently, is that, from procurement, we've always had the historical look, right? We look at strategic sourcing, category management, spend. Spend is very rear view facing. And it's from different times, different legacy systems. So now being able to look forward and to predict what those costs could be in terms of IT maintenance, renewal, software, marketing costs in terms of digital media, print, and really estimating and predicting what that cost will be will definitely change the way procurement can add value inside a business unit.
Yeah, I think so as well. Just to add a quick thought onto that, Kim, before we move on. Taxonomy and those things is pretty much that's a pretty much a strike in the strike zone kind of a problem. It's really kind of a part of the data cleansing process. In years gone past, in my experience at least, analysis could be tricked up by just capitals. if something were capitalized or not capitalized, or if it had an abbreviation, or it had the determinant "the" in front of it, it could totally screw up. It could screw up spend analysis. It could mess up a lot of things. And these new data tools kind of take that into consideration. And the important part that I thought was cool about that, Jason just touched on, and that's that they learn as it goes. It's kind of, it's kind of like some of the tools that we see in consumer interactiveness, where they kind of know, it starts to autofill your text knowing what you typically say. And for me, being from Texas, mine had to learn how to use the word y'all. So it's sort of that way, but it is very cool and it is very easy. Would you agree with that, Jason?
Yeah, for sure. I think absolutely.
So, Kim, where does that put us in terms of timing?
Yes, it brings us just about to the top of the hour. I don't have any more questions in queue. If anybody does have anything, now is truly the time to go ahead and get those in. Doing one last check, and it looks like that is about it. I do want to thank everybody for taking the time out today, in particular the two of you for being here and presenting with us. We thank the entire Procurability team. We always love working with you. And we look forward to connecting with you again soon. We are pushing out the presentation today. You'll see that via file transfer on your WebEx screen, and to download that presentation deck to your desktop, just click on the link. I also want to mention that Procurability will be presenting at the summit on Wednesday, October 17th at 2 p.m. The title of that is an Agile Procurement Workforce, peer discussion to advance your organization. So be sure to catch them at the summit if you are going to be there with us. And with that, we will hope to see you back here again on September 18th for the next big webinar with Rapid Ratings. And last but not least, I do want to just make one quick mention of today being September 11th, and our appreciation to everybody nationwide and beyond, and wish everybody a happy and healthy day today. So with that, once again, Jason and Sherry, thank you for being with us today.